Hey, I'm your host, Marissa Panay. Welcome to Your Brand is Showing, the podcast for service providers who are tired of blending in and wondering why no matter how much you market your business, you're still not attracting the clients you want. Spoiler, it all comes back to your brand. So let's make sure your brand is saying the right thing to the right people so you can finally create content that truly connects. Hey everybody, so today I have a guest on the show. I have Cassidy Handle. She is a brand messaging strategist and a copywriter who helps small to medium-sized businesses nail their words, earn trust, and sell seamlessly. Trust me, she is an expert in this. I've personally worked with her, love her to death. Cassidy, would you like to explain a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm Cassidy. I'm also known as the Copywriting Mama. I am a copywriter and messaging strategist by title, but I basically help brands nail their words. So, like Marissa said, they can earn trust, attract their dream people, and then sell to them seamlessly while still sounding like themselves. Because while marketing and strategy is important and the goal is to make money, we also want to do it in a way that feels true to who we are and something that's joyful to show up for. And so I kind of help brands marry the being yourself, but not oversharing and being to yourself and still making money and being profitable. So I'm kind of the person that is the glue between all of that for brands.
I love that. And I think that is such an important thing to differentiate too, is with messaging, a lot of the times it's oh, I just want to show up as myself. But it's okay, is yes, be authentic, but do we really want to show all of that raw vulnerability, or do we want to refine to be more of a business or professional and all that stuff? But that thread.
There's a difference between a personal brand, right? And then a brand that has a product or a service to sell, right? We're not all going to be like Kylie Pitts on TikToks filming day in the lives. Not everyone's going to make money doing that. And so when you have a service or a product that's really mission-based and purpose-based, it's important to kind of stay in that realm.
For sure. So for anybody that's tuning in, they're okay, messaging, that's words, what is that? Is it copy? What would you say, basic description, if somebody was hey, what is brand messaging? What would you tell them?
Okay, I don't want to get this backwards because sometimes I say it backwards, but the horse is the messaging strategy and the copy is the cart. And so you always want to put the horse before the cart, have the messaging strategy, know the why behind what you're saying, know the intention of its end result before you start writing the words. I know sometimes it can be tempting just to get right to those emails, right to that content. And if you don't have a foundational guiding force, which would be that messaging strategy, then there's nothing to lead that cart forward with.
100%. There's always got to be a why and all those things. And I know some of the things that to start it off, it's you have to figure out your mission and all of that. If somebody is going into this, how do they figure out what to communicate and what's the best way to get across?
Sure. So you have a business idea. You're I want to do this for work. I want to turn this into my business. Where am I going to go first? As far as your messaging and your marketing goes, there has to be a foundation. For me, it's the service that we did together, the brand messaging blueprint. And you want to basically, it's almost kind of like the employee handbook, but not as far as core values, mission statement, have the brand story down, the brand's promise, the vision that the brand has of where it would like to be in 5-10 years, identify the target audience, right? Because maybe you have a product or service or an expert in something and you're I know somebody will pay for this, but you have 10 different identifiers of who might pay for it. Get really specific and get really down to that ideal person who would buy it. And then other people will trickle in too, but when you can speak specifically to one profile, you have a better chance of connecting with them rather than spreading thin and wide and maybe landing with nobody at all. And so that would be the first thing, is nail that messaging strategy, that document first. And then what's cool about something like that is you can give it to all the employees, all the people that delegate, so that they know the brand story by heart too. And then they feel more pulled to the purpose of it. They feel more attached to the mission because they understand it versus just saying, oh, we just sell this or we just offer this kind of service. They know at a core level where that brand story came from, how it was born, and what the vision is so that they can make decisions that coincide with that too.
Right, 100%. Yeah. It's creating that cohesive experience in terms of how you communicate and all those things. And the other thing too with tying back to the audience is right now I feel a lot of people are oh, I work with this type of person, but you don't go into the deeper of okay, well, how does this person talk? How does this person think? How does this person make decisions? What's stopping them? What's their fears? What are all these things? And when you figure that out, then you're easily you're more easily able to communicate and write copy and words that actually resonate. And it's those, oh, this person's in my head type of feeling versus just do you want help with creating a logo? It's some people might not think about a logo. They might think about something in a different terms. Oh, I need artwork, or I always use the term of like, I've had so many clients come to me for like design projects and they're like, hey, I need a flyer. And like their word is always, I need a flyer. But that flyer has been social media post, it's been a billboard, it's been a handout. People can screw that in a million different ways. But basically figuring out what you can say that will actually resonate with your audience.
And it also helps with things like filtering decisions. Like if you know your core values and your mission statement and a brand partnership opportunity comes across your desk or across your head marketer's desk, they can filter it through, hey, does this align with our core values? Does this serve our long-term vision for the brand? And if it doesn't, you can pass on it and be confident knowing that it doesn't check those boxes for your brand and move on. And then when things do come and they are highly aligned, it can feel like a full body yes without guilt or question because you know exactly who your brand is at a core level.
Yeah, 100%. And that goes with strategy in general, not just messaging. It's like when you have those foundational pillars, that literally is your foundation. Like that is like your checklist, so to speak. So you can go through all those things. One thing that I loved personally about your messaging and your voice and like all that stuff is when we started working together, because shout out, totally invest in her brand messaging blueprint, 10 out of 10, amazing. Like when I first got your emails, you still had your cowboy aesthetic, even in your emails and stuff, with the little signature and the emoji at the end of your sign off and stuff like that. And it was like, it created a cohesive experience. And it wasn't just like on social media, you show up this way, and then your emails, you show up a different way, or your website. Like it truly is the through line throughout everything. And it's not, and it's one of those things where like, for me, I always focus on like design, and I'm like, oh, like your branding, like visual identity has to look the same. But if you're talking in one way on social media and you're talking another way on your website, there's going to be a disconnect, and that's going to lose trust with your audience. Whereas when it was like, oh, I found you on social media, we connected, it was like a real experience. And then via become a client, see the emails, and it's like, oh, she really is like, this is how she talks, like throughout it all. And it makes a better trust situation.
People overlook those like fulfillment emails or like your purchases being fulfilled. And so instead of, thank you for your purchase, it's like, thanks for buying my thing or whatever. And even that, those are the little details I think that set you apart as a brand. And when you hear the word on brand, right? On brand is a trendy thing to say now. Oh, it's on brand. How would you know what is on brand for you if you don't have that defined somewhere, if it only lives in the CEO's head or in the founder's head and they, switch flip-flop around, they wish and wash because we're people and that's what we do. And so having something documented, it can hold the whole brand accountable, from everything from a fulfillment email to a button on a website. Everything can be cohesive.
So I think the other thing too is like this show is geared towards service providers. So like people like you and I, it's like one woman show running a business. So it's like in our heads, we're like, oh, we know exactly what we're doing. But then we get to the point where we're like, okay, I'm going to outsource, or I'm going to like try to get some help with something. And then it's like, okay, how do I actually convey all the thoughts in my head? Like I understand my brand, my business, but even then it's like sometimes there's confusion because you're fighting all the brain chaos. But it's like, how do you Englishify this to other people in a way that they will then be able to sound like you or do those things? So not only just having a document to make it make sense for you or for people with big teams, it's like, this is going to be a tool that you can like pass out to other people for them to use, or even in the world of like AI, like creating a custom bot or like doing anything like that, or you can clearly articulate who you are, how you sound, and all those little things about your business. It's easier for you to not have to do it all yourself.
Right. I remember when we started using AI, I was working for a podcast and her prompts were one sentence. It was like, I am a so-and-so and this is who I serve. Write me this. And it was like so broad and so unspecific. And now that I've taught my clients to use their brand messaging blueprints with AI, you can get really highly curated outputs that, whether it's content or planning styles, whatever it is, it really has your voice. And of course, it always is going to take tweaking. You're always going to have to kind of go back and forth with it. It's never, just one and done, but it makes such a difference because if you figure everybody in your industry is going in there and going, I'm a marketing agency who serves unique, bold brands, right? They're all getting the same output. And that's why you sound like everybody else. When you feed it something that's 15 pages of exactly the one-liners you use, the keywords you use, it can give you something totally different, totally elevated. And so, that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
I love it. So I'm going to hit on that like bold brands type of like mentality, because I feel like a lot of people think that is enough. Like they think that that is something specific enough for their business. And they're like, oh, make something magnetic, make something, be witty, be sarcastic. And like, they'll just pull these keywords and think that that is defining themselves and how they speak. Can you pull that back a layer and kind of say, what I guess, how do you articulate who you are? Like somebody that's DIYing this, like what tip would you give them?
The DIY version of what I do got to be on the way, because I just think that so many people need this earlier on and it would be really helpful. So people think brand voice and they want to put like 3 words. They're like maternal, educational, knowledgeable, respectful. And to peel it back another layer, I'd argue, what does your brand do and not do? You know from experience, we do the do's and don'ts. What does your brand do and not do? Humor. Okay. But like what humor is appropriate? What humor is not appropriate? Do you curse? Do you not curse? Like, for instance, I use the words like ish, or I might put an asterisk where the vowel is in the cuss word, but I'm never going to usually type out like a full F bomb or anything like that. And to specify that in your messaging strategy document. And then also the loves and the hates, right? You want your brand to have personality. Like, is your brand a hardcore espresso drinker and can't stand the idea of a Keurig hot bean water? Like, specify that. And I think some people would think, oh, what does that have to do with my brand? But your brand has a personality too. And a lot of the time, especially like for our brands where you're the CEO, but you're also the person who's forward facing in the brand and people are getting to know you, and maybe you're a mom behind the scenes, maybe you're whatever. I think it's important to incorporate the things that are going to be mentioned, because too, AI can pull from that and say, this is the story we're going to weave in today. So it's going further than just the descriptive words, further than just the like, it sounds like this, but also loves and hates this, does and doesn't do this, and then giving very clear examples of that.
Yeah, I think that's also really important too. It's like I talk a lot about like core values like as a business, but you're a service provider. So as a person, what are your personal values as well? Like what will you stand for? What will you won't stand for? Because especially if you're handing your like content, to this example, off to somebody else or to AI or something like that, if they're writing this saying like, for me specifically, like I am not a Swiftie in the slightest. And so if sometimes I'll have like ChatGPT be like, oh, it's like a T Swift reference or like a Beyonce reference. And I'm like, I would never fucking say that. Like that's a hard no for me. But going off of all my other personality traits, you would think that would fit in. So it's like, oh, okay. But it's like, no, I'd rather like use some obscure like something else type of reference, but like bring it back to base. But it's like having, what do you stand for? What are your personal likes, loves, all those things that you said? Like that was one thing that really stood out to me in your in the blueprint, was like you were like, because normally in my head I'd be like do's and doesn't, like don't say this word, don't do that. But you were like, no, she has a podcast, she has a dog, like these are important to her. And it's like things you wouldn't think of, incorporate into your overall like brand and all that stuff.
And the core values, like how many times have you seen a brand put like honesty, integrity, authenticity? And it's like, it's so bland. And that's why.
What does that even mean too?
To what extent are we talking? And so I think it's so important for your core values to not just be one word, which is why I always put like, it's kind of almost a statement or a tagline, and then there's an explanation of it. Like, for instance, one of mine is simple and silly. And it's like, let's not take life too seriously or anything. This isn't life or death. We're dealing with copywriting and marketing. Like the urgency, we're not going to create fake urgency. And so explaining things like that, where it might feel long-winded, it might feel like, oh, I can't just put that on a flyer 4 words across. But it's like, but that's not how core values are meant to be used. Core values are supposed to be that like filter, that net that everything else your brand like does falls through. And that's so important, I think, is finding core values that aren't just the generic what everybody else has, especially everybody else in your industry.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be a flyer on your wall. It's supposed to be something you live and breathe. And then what was I going to say? Oh, so like the other thing that I feel like a lot of people struggle with in their copy specifically is they try, like there's that, oh, I have to sound professionalism, and then you don't sound like you. So they're always fighting that. But then it's also a matter of, I guess, jargon, where it's like you're trying to explain things in a way that makes you sound like, oh, I know what I'm talking to. Like you can better communicate to your peers better than you can your audience. Do you have any tips for people to simplify like what they're trying to say, or like how to, like, perfect example, I always struggled with like, how do I say that I help with like the strategy, the design, all these different assets? And you're like, oh, voice and visuals. And I was like, I never would have got that on my own. So like if you're trying, I guess.
Okay. No, I got you. First of all, some people need to mute and unfollow and stop watching what everyone else is in your industry is doing. I think that's the first thing you need to do. The next thing you need to do is remember that not everybody, like your ideal clients often don't use the lingo you do. Like I say lead generation, like passively, I just know what that means, or lead magnet even. And often audience is like, what is a lead magnet? I'm like, a freebie. And they know what that is. They know what a freebie is. And so having to take things down a couple notches because you want to speak to them. And it doesn't, I think people fear that it will make you sound too simple or not like an expert. No, the expertise is being able to take something that is this level topic, you're a level, I would say you take your level 10 knowledge and you package it in a way that a level 2 or 3 can understand it. And that's really the secret of it. And then the way that you would get to that point is by getting that target audience profile where you figure out their demographic, what's their situation, values, desires, and drives. Obviously, we covered too. What are their specific challenges and what benefits? And don't put that in your nerdy, expansive way. You put that in their way. Like, what is their challenge? Is it that they log in and never know what to post? They've scrolled too much and buzzed all their creative juices out before they've even started making the post. I mean, it's something that you sit down and you go, how do I get into their words? And another way to get that is to do market research, right? And so asking things like polls on your stories, asking people for input. Sometimes you can incentivize feedback too. Just remembering that if you incentivize feedback, you can't reward only good feedback. Like on something like a testimonial, it has to say good, bad, or otherwise, I'm going to send you the Starbucks card, even if you hate me. So that's how you are fair about it. But I think taking those things too, and, back to the whole AI thing, you can plug that stuff into AI too. I have plugged in every testimonial that any clients left, all my discovery call, my intake forms and stuff I put in because I can say, this is what they're saying. Help me write 10 posts based on their pain points, positioning my service as a solution, using my brand messaging blueprint that I've also plugged into there. And I will say, I still have to write the post from scratch, but it will get me 90% of the way there as far as the idea goes. But then learning how to write the copy from that messaging is just something that you learn practicing over time. But back to the whole simplification thing, I think not trying to flex on your peers, not trying to be like, I'm just as much of an expert as so-and-so. You might get chosen over them by simplifying it, right?
Yeah.
They're making it this big spider web and their ideal clients are overwhelmed. You can take that and boil it down to something they understand. They're going to choose you over the competition.
And even the fact of saying oh, I think from a design perspective, I'll say things like, oh, visual design. And they're like, what does that mean? I literally had an email the other day where I was like, oh yeah, I'll package over all your design files and assets. And they were like, what exactly is an asset? And I was like, that is a great question. I'm glad you asked.
Then they don't feel confused. And then too, the client satisfaction, because ultimately your business relies on client satisfaction, right? When they're satisfied and they feel like they got the win, they're going to recommend you to other people. They're going to buy your next product. But I think so many people make the mistake by selling this thing and then handing it off and not explaining it well enough, not having email sequences in place that walk them through it, not having check-ins that go, hey, where are we at? Communicating, things like that. And when your client is confused, they're frustrated. They feel like you've walked them out into the desert and you left them there without water and they're not sure what to do. And then they lose trust in you and they feel burned by you. And that's when the cascade of frustration can fall into them just being your worst fan that hates you and wants to spread your name through the mud because you made them feel like you are a fraud when that wasn't the case necessarily. You just didn't do a good enough job explaining and walking them to the finish line and making sure that they felt like they got the win.
Yeah. So communication is literally so important in every aspect. And that's one of those things too, where it's without your messaging is your communication. So if you can't figure out a way to say what you have to say in a way that makes sense for them and in a way that resonates with them, and most of what you're doing is probably not face to face. And you're going to have to send emails. You're going to have to write some posts. You're going to have to do all these things. So again, going back to the roots of who you are, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, that's going to be able to then help you leverage how and what you're going to actually say. And if your one word value is transparency, it's okay, going beyond that, are you going to tell them every step of the way? Or are you going to say, okay, my value is transparency, but then you're going to leave them hanging after they sign a contract? That's not really transparent.
Yeah, you should trust me because I said I was trustworthy. I'm trustworthy. Yeah. And I think too, thinking back on this thing with the assets thing, you can almost turn that into an email, a content post, a thread. I would post on threads in the polls. Like if I said asset in terms of design, do you know what that is? And I would start polling people, start the conversation. And then people, right, there's always the silent people following you, are watching that conversation unfold. And not only are you educating them without having to educate, like people I think sometimes feel like they have to give away their bread and butter as their education. Like me give away my blueprint on my content. And I don't, because it's the thing I charge for, but I can't explain what a good core value is. I can't explain what a good mission statement consists of. And so for you, that might look like a carousel about like, what is your assets or what comes with your assets? And then breaking that down into like, you're going to get a Google Drive that has your font files, that has your logos on transparent backgrounds so that you can slap them on anything, and just really showing them, and then that can go so far. I mean, it can go into posts about like how to save your logos and then have them in your camera roll. So that way you can add them onto your Instagram stories really easy and have branded stories and branded reels, things like that, those education pieces, obviously they don't take away from what you're selling, but they help your client better understand what you're doing. And that's just one pillar, right? Educational content's just one pillar of the whole rainbow. But, yeah, that's what that makes me think of, because I would know what you're talking about when you said asset, but I think that people who are coming to brand new business owners that are like, just take this content demon and slay it for me, they have no idea.
Yeah, no, 100%. And even going back to what you said about the testimonials, I've done that a bunch of times where I like mass read a lot of testimonials at once. And I'm like, there's so many common words here that like I would never use, but like all of these people are saying it. So I should probably start referring to XYZ in this manner. And it's like, your audience is telling you, and it's, especially with the polls too. If you've ever hosted a poll, because I know people are like, well, no one engages. Have you thought that maybe people aren't engaging because they're not understanding the words that you're using? Like, do a poll. If nobody answers it, then scale it back, talk about it in a different term or verbiage or whatever. See if you get a better hit, or like have a conversation with people, like literally talk to your audience, like in terms of polling, or talk to your customers better yet, of just being like, hey, if I said this to you, does this make sense? Like,
yeah, and the type of questions you ask is so important. I just audited somebody's client experience assessment the other day, which is my signature like form that gets sent out after you filled one out, after we offboard. And so some people will send out a form and they poll, they do their market research, but it's like all 1 through 5 ratings. You're not getting any feedback that's usable. You're not getting any words. You're getting some scores, which might help. But you want to ask questions to people, and this counts for stories. This counts for emails too now, right? Flowdesk has this new like poll feature, so you can like put polls in the email. And not only that, you can link it to a segment. So whoever answers, like, what do you need the most help with? Sounding like yourself, making more sales, doing XYZ. And then they're all going to go into segments. So you know who is struggling with what. I mean, the extent that this can go to is so incredible. But I think sometimes people overcomplicate it, or they think that it's too hard for them. And they're like, it's too hard for me and I don't have the money to delegate it right now. And I just, that's like so anti of who I am as a person. I'm like, I'm going to figure it out until I can pay somebody else to do it. Like, I'm going to just have to figure this out. So having quality questions like, why did you choose to work with me over anybody else? How was the experience overall? Was there anything you'd change about it? Things like that help people get to that point. Because if you're like, how was it? Good or bad?
my favorite question to ask is, what were you feeling prior to working with me? And then what were you feeling after? Tap into, okay, so they weren't just confused or frustrated, like they were ready to quit, like trying to get those words instead of imagining. Like when you're building your ideal customer template, then you'll actually have things to actually apply back to. And then, oh, they didn't just feel relieved. They were like, oh, wow, I feel confident. I feel this. Oh, okay. Now we have some words that'll actually help me attract other people that are in the same situations.
And when you have all this, I think people are like, first of all, this is an evolving thing. You will do this over time, just like your blueprint. You'll say something, you'll get an idea at 2:00 in the morning in your bed of like, that's a statement that needs to be on my one-liners list. And you'll just pop it in your iPhone notes and add it to the blueprint. And then next time you plug it into AI, it will reflect, but it's evolving. So don't feel like you have to get this right and get it perfect the first time. I think my own brand's blueprint has been redone like 3 times at this point, just because we've evolved, we've evolved from who I was specifically helping. So just know that there's no pressure to be the same exact person you are today in your brand than you are 10 years from now. Your brand's going to evolve. You're going to grow. You're going to go through life experiences, right? Especially women that go through the motherhood transition, I think struggle with that a lot. Is they're like, well, my brand, I built this whole thing when I was childless and gallivanting, and now I'm not doing that. Like your audience is growing too that entire time. Like your audience is going through life transitions. And while you may lose some people when you start incorporating things like motherhood or whatever, you might also gain some people who didn't resonate with you for a long time that now suddenly you guys have this common thread. So don't be or be fearless about changing, evolving, and being open to just growing and improving, I think.
I love that. And I'm really glad you mentioned that because I feel like a lot of people are hesitant to invest in brand services, whether that is messaging, whether that is strategy, whether that is design, because they're afraid of what if this isn't who I am in 5 to 10 years? It's like, okay, well, one, we're going to look long term. We're not just building because we're building something for right now. Like we're not being reactive, we're being proactive. But that's the other thing is like, look at any brand out there in existence, like big or small. They've pivoted, they've evolved, they've like that is part of being a business. So it's like, if that is something that's scaring you right now, of like, I don't want to invest in this because what if XYZ changes? At least you'll have something to start going strategically forward versus just like throwing spaghetti and like you'll have something sustainable to work with. And then you can always evolve and pivot as you go. On that note, what would you say is like your number one tip to, like if somebody like heard this episode and they're like, okay, I have so many things swirling around in my brain, where would you go? Where would you give them?
Here's the thing. And I know we keep touching back to AI. You'd think that AI just writes all my copy for me. I swear it doesn't. But when I'm confused and overwhelmed, a good brain dump never hurts, right? And I love to brain dump either in a doc or straight into Claude and just say, can you make sense of this? Can you tell me like what you're going to pull from all this jump like stuff that's come out of my head? I think that is always a great option. I think also investing in things, I think people overlook like a one-on-one call or like a one-off experience. A lot of people that you're following that you're like, oh, I might want to work with them, but I don't want to commit to this big package. Most of us offer like some sort of one-on-one pick your brain session or even like a free discovery call. Don't hesitate to reach out to people that you see slaying the area in which you're struggling and just saying like, hey, what would be like my first step to just like figuring out where I'm at and like what might be some next steps. And yeah, the squeaky wheel or whatever gets the oil, like just start communicating it, start working it out. Don't let it just stay trapped in your head because you're just going to keep cycling back to it until you deal with it. And the only way to deal with it is to squeeze it out. I'm like kind of like a fart.
Oh my God, I love that. Yeah, no, I agree with like everything you said. Like my ChatGPT, like chats are insane of just like, please help me unravel this brain chaos. Like I will literally say that. And then it's like, oh, I see exactly what you're trying to do. I'm like, thank you, because I couldn't unweave that. So thank you.
I was like, I'm not scared of my camera roll getting leaked. I'm scared that you're going to see the conversations I'm having with Claude and talking to him like he's a real life person. Like, thank you so much. That was very insightful and helpful. Like,
yeah, so during the I'm like, oh my God, you did so good. And I'm like, this is a robot. I'm talking to myself, but we're fine. This is great. He's my best friend.
He's my therapist.
Yeah, like whatever. That and then the other thing that you said with like discovery calls and stuff like that, I think that is so important because there's a lot of like hesitation too of people being like, oh, I don't want to commit to this. There's nothing locking you into just like chatting with somebody at like a discovery call. It's like you can have all these ideas and maybe you'll find out on the discovery call you're not actually ready for a service or you're not actually ready for whatever it is, but now you have more clarity as to where you should go. It's like you can take steps forward without investment sometimes, and then be very confident in your investment when it is the time.
Totally. I usually, if somebody's not a good fit, I tell them and then I say, here's what would put you in the place that we'd be ready to work together. And not everyone's going to go above and beyond like that, but find your people who will. Find the people who are happy to help you and happy to give you some action steps between where you are and where they are if it's not a perfect fit right away.
Yeah, no. And I'm going to piggyback on that again. Like that is also a very telling sign that like that's a good person to future work with, because if somebody is like, oh, I'm like, you're not for me or whatever, like you'll get the vibe check. Like on a discovery call, like someone might seem perfect on the internet. They might have nailed their brand messaging. They might have nailed their visual identity, but like then you actually hop on a call with them and they're not what they seem. And you're like, oh, okay, this was a lie. And that's what you don't want your messaging and your stuff to do for you. So if people loved you, which I'm sure they did, where can they get more of you? And I know you have some free resources and services.
Okay, so you can find me on Instagram at The Copywriting Mama. I also have a website, thecopywritingmama.com. I always say, if you can handle me at my threads, you deserve me on my Instagram. So if you're silly on threads, please come find me and let's be friends. As far as free resources go, I do have a free 50 subject lines. It's called Fire in the Hole. It increases your open rates at alarmingly high rates. And so basically you can go get that by getting on my email list, which is at the link in my Instagram bio. It's just that top box out of all of them, and it'll be in the first email. So you'll get that freebie. Doesn't tease the freebie in any of the opt-ins you're going to see, but just know that first email, my welcome sequence, will give you the subject lines, and you can use those as social media hooks too. So that's fun.
I love the repurposing. I love it.